A huge portion of the world was formerly part of various colonial empires, most notably the British, French, and Spanish, but the Portuguese, Germans, Russians, Japanese, and others had their colonial empires as well. What these countries have in common is that they lost most of the land they gained during the 18th and 19th centuries. The United States, on the other hand, has kept most of the land it has gained and rules over considerably more territory than it did 200 years ago. But there are some former American colonies that have gained independence, the most recent one doing so in 1994. This video is about the 5 countries that were once part of the United States, how America came to rule over them, and how they gained independence. Number 1 is Liberia. You know, the country whose flag looks like the American flag. Including this one might be controversial, as it's debatable as to whether or not it was really a colony of the United States. At the very least, the country was founded by American colonists who were funded by an American organization. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, issues in American politics during the antebellum period was slavery. And since the founding of the United States, there were those who recognized that slavery was at odds with the principles America was founded on. Among those who were opposed to slavery, there were those who wanted to send all the newly freed slaves to Africa. The American Colonization Society was founded in 1816 for that very purpose. It attracted support from some big names in American politics like Henry Clay. Even Abraham Lincoln was at one time sympathetic to the American Colonization Society's mission. One of the society's members, General Robert Harper, suggested the name Liberia, Land of Freedom. After some preliminary expeditions along the coast of West Africa were made, the society settled on a location for the colony. In 1821, the area that is now Monrovia, the current capital of Liberia, was settled. The city would get its name in 1824, towards the end of James Monroe's presidency. But Liberia was not yet a country. A governor was appointed by the American Colonization Society, and oftentimes the colonists did not get along well with the mostly white officials from the society. Over the next decade, several settlements were founded, often named after the states that the colonists came from. There was Mississippi in Africa, Maryland in Africa, Kentucky in Africa, and more. In 1837, most of these colonies united behind a central government. However, Maryland in Africa became the Republic of Maryland and was effectively its own country until joining Liberia in 1857. So if the Republic of Maryland had stayed independent, then Georgia would not be the only state that is also the name of a country. The colony of Liberia wasn't alone. There were already people living there, who sometimes came into conflict with the American settlers. There was also Britain. The British had established the colony of Sierra Leone not far away, which was also founded as a place to send freed slaves. The British tried to get the United States to tell them what the status of Liberia was. Was it an American colony? Was it an independent country? America didn't answer the question, only stating that the British couldn't have it. In 1847, Liberia declared independence and wrote a constitution based on that of the U.S. Its flag is also based on the American flag, though notably only having one star. You may also notice that the Liberian flag has 11 stripes instead of 13. The 11 stripes are for the 11 signatories of Liberia's Declaration of Independence. Britain was the first country to recognize Liberia. France, Belgium, and several countries that would later form Germany followed. But America did not recognize Liberia until 1862, 15 years after the country's Declaration of Independence. The descendants of the American settlers, most of whom were freed slaves, but not all, are called American Liberians. It is estimated that 18,858 African Americans made the journey from America to Liberia from the 1820s up until the Civil War. In 1807, America outlawed the slave trade, and in the law prohibiting the slave trade, there was a stipulation that when slave ships were captured, the liberated slaves were to be repatriated to Africa, and many of them were sent to Liberia. With the abolition of slavery in 1865, immigration from America to Liberia died down. Americo-Liberians would dominate the country politically and economically for more than a century. For most of this time, the country was ruled by the True Whig Party, named after the American Whig Party. Liberia was unsurprisingly friendly with the United States and joined both world wars on America's side. In 1980, Sergeant Samuel Doe staged a coup against William Tolbert. This led to the end of Americo-Liberian dominance over the country. The second country is the Philippines, which is by far the largest and most famous former American possession. Spain ruled over the Philippines from the 16th to the 19th centuries. In 1898, the United States declared war on Spain. Though the war was ostensibly about liberating Cuba from Spanish rule, the U.S. also seized the Philippines along with Puerto Rico and Guam. Cuba was given independence within a few years. However, America held on to the rest of the territory it gained. Not everyone in America was happy about this. Before the war ended, the American Anti-Imperialist League was founded with the goal of preventing the annexation of the Philippines. Mark Twain was a prominent member of this society, as was former U.S. President Grover Cleveland. The Philippines became a major issue in the 1900 U.S. presidential election. Republican President William McKinley supported annexation, while his Democratic challenger William Jennings Bryan opposed it. McKinley won re-election, and it wasn't even close. He was assassinated in 1901, but his successor, Theodore Roosevelt, was an even stronger advocate of American expansionism. In 1902, the Philippines became a U.S. territory, officially known as the Insular Government of the Philippine Islands. During the latter years of Spanish rule, rebellions had already broken out in the Philippines. These rebellions continued into the early years of American rule. A Philippine Republic was proclaimed in 1899 with Emilio Aguinaldo as president. In 1901, Aguinaldo was captured by U.S. forces and pledged loyalty to the United States. In 1902, the war was declared over, but some fighting continued until 1913. There were still voices in both the Philippines and America calling for independence. Eventually, in 1934, the United States Congress passed a law that provided for the creation of a Philippine Commonwealth that would facilitate the transition to independence. This transition was interrupted by the Japanese invasion and occupation of the Philippines. Emiliano Aguinaldo, the president of the short-lived Philippine Republic, was still alive and ended up collaborating with the Japanese. But American forces led by Douglas MacArthur came back to liberate the Philippines in 1944. The country gained independence in 1946. The other three countries are the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, and Palau. These three countries have a lot in common. They're all in the Pacific Ocean. They were all part of the Caroline Islands, which were part of the Spanish East Indies, even though Spain mostly ignored them. During the Spanish-American War, America largely ignored the islands too, only taking Guam. In 1899, Spain sold its remaining Pacific islands to Germany. Germany wouldn't hold on to these islands for long. They were taken by Japan during World War I. When World War II came around, these islands saw fierce fighting between America and Japan. The most famous battle was probably the one fought on Kwajalein Atoll in 1944, which is part of the Marshall Islands today. Another famous battle was Peleliu in Palau. The islands that would become the present-day Federated States of Micronesia did not see any major battles, but the Truk Lagoon was bombed by the U.S. Air Force. After the war, these islands, along with the Northern Mariana Islands, became part of the United States Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands, which were administered by the United States. There were some in America who thought that the islands should remain part of the United States because of the American blood spilled in capturing the islands. But most of the Trust Territory would eventually become independent. Before independence, the United States conducted nuclear weapons tests. The most famous was in Bikini Atoll, which is where the swimwear got its name. 170 people were forcibly relocated from Bikini Atoll, as well as nearby atolls of Eniwetok, Rongelap, and Wotho. The nuclear tests lasted from 1946 to 1958. The nuclear tests were understandably unpopular with the people of the Pacific Islands and have caused long-term environmental and health effects. In later decades, the United States government would provide compensation for those experiencing radiation-related sicknesses and made attempts to decontaminate Eniwetok and Bikini Atolls. In 1979, 4 districts of the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands ratified the new Constitution of the Federated States of Micronesia. Micronesia is the name of a country and a region. The Marshall Islands, the Northern Mariana Islands, and Palau are all part of the region of Micronesia, but chose not to join the new country. The Marshall Islands adopted their own constitution without any issues. The Northern Mariana Islands chose to remain with the United States as a territory. However, Palau adopted a nuclear-free constitution, which upset the U.S. government. In 1986, the Marshall Islands and the Federated State of Micronesia joined the Compact of Free Association, terminating their membership in the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. The Compact provides access to U.S. domestic programs for citizens of these countries. It allows citizens of these countries to live and work in the United States and vice versa. It allows for the United States military to operate in these countries. Palau wanted to join the Compact of Free Association, but its nuclear-free constitution was a roadblock that needed to be overcome. Eventually, the constitution was amended, and Palau became the third, and as of 2024, the most recent, country to join the Compact of Free Association in 1994. And with that, the trust territory of the Pacific Islands ceased to exist. Side note, just 2 years later, America signed a nuclear test ban treaty anyway. Which of these countries has the most interesting history to you? Let me know in the comments.